That Rob Manfred comes in, currently in his third term as the Major League Baseball commissioner, and his sport now is rolling. It is humming, baby. The Dodgers, the Yankees, the Mets, the Padres. You know, years ago I had you on, and we talked about some of the concerns with baseball. All these years later, you have solved many of the riddles. But I just said being a baseball commissioner is different because there's been so many great books on baseball and the history is much richer than the NFL or the NBA. We talk about Sandy Koufax and Mantle. You do deal with baseball purists, and Goodell doesn't deal with a lot of football purists. Has it made these moves sometimes a little more difficult to make, that you kind of have a battle with all of them?
Look, our history and tradition is, great. It's good for the sport. It's part of our popularity, but it does make change more difficult. I think the key for us has been to listen to our fans, our current fans, and make changes that's consonant, consistent with what they're saying about the game.
Yeah. Are you surprised, Angels to the Dodgers, are you surprised by the global impact and the merchandising impact and the ratings impact immediately with Shohei Ohtani?
Yeah, I must admit I was a little surprised. I mean, he's been a great player since he entered the league. But the shift from the Angels to the Dodgers has really been explosive. I mean, he had a great year last year that added to it. And I think the fact that the Dodgers won was really important, but it has exploded. I was just in Japan for the opener. The level of interest and excitement there, Colin, just absolutely unbelievable.
I said this. I pushed back. Yesterday, Jeff Passan had a comment. He was on a podcast, and he said, listen, the sport's humming. Don't screw with it. He got a lot of people saying, oh, we can't compete. And I laughed because the Brewers and the Guardians and Kansas City and Cleveland made the playoffs, and those are not high payroll teams. There is this narrative. The minute the Yankees and Dodgers make the World Series, everybody goes, whoa, hold on. This is way too much. And my take is, you guys haven't had a repeat champion in forever, but you do have to fight that a little, do you not? That, oh, here comes the Dodger-Yankee money machine. You have to battle that, don't you?
Yeah, there's no question, Colin, that there is a perception of, competitive imbalance, if you'll let me use that phrase, that it's much tougher for our smaller market teams to compete. The disparity of resources available to the clubs is very significant, and fans feel it.
Yeah. It's obviously not hurting that much because you've had so many. I mean, the Royals won a recent World Series, the Rangers, the Nationals won a recent World Series. The NBA has made changes through the years. They want to keep their stars in markets. They don't want them bouncing around. And I pushed back to Adam Silver. I said, Adam, he was on the show a month ago. I said, trades are great. I get excited. I wanted to see Ohtani with a new. I wanted to see Freddie Freeman with a new team. What is your take as a commissioner on player movement, even if they go to a stacked roster? Does it bother you if you get sort of an all-star team in L.A.?
No, look, I think it's important for every team, consistent with their resources, to go out there and try to put the best team they possibly can on the field for the benefit of their fans. Obviously, in terms of building a fan base, there's an advantage to continuity and of players being in a market. Fans get attached to a particular player. That's one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is an off-season where players move around via trade or free agency, creates a lot of excitement and can create hope in a market where it didn't exist before.
So people talk about parity, and I say baseball's fine with parity. Here's the lack of parity that I see, pitcher to hitter, is that the speed of pitches has gone up 2 miles an hour over 15 years. There are more 6'6" guys throwing 99 miles an hour. And it's just I can remember, I tell the story all the time. When I was a kid, fell in love with baseball in the 70s. If you threw 94, 5 miles an hour, you were a flamethrower. Nolan Ryan was like a Martian, 100. Everybody's throwing 98 now. The sport historically has moved the mound up and down, the Bob Gibson era. Should that be another change that, hey, the batters, even though you have more base runners, there are more stolen bases, the batters sometimes do feel, Rob, overwhelmed. Would you consider a slight movement of the mound?
Look, I think that the dominance of our pitching, and, nothing against great pitchers, we do have very, very dominant pitching right now. It's a combination of bigger, better athletes, throwing harder, frankly, moving pitchers in and out of the game more frequently. And it is a trend that we pay a lot of attention to because balls in play, base hits are kind of the core of the action that's so important to fans.
Yeah. People, the hues and the cries of a salary cap make their way to the internet. Now, you have a very strong players union, so good luck with a salary cap in baseball. But if it got to a point where, with deferred payments, the big markets, the Guardians didn't make it, and Detroit didn't make it, and Milwaukee did, and you got over the next 5 years, you felt like, wow, Commissioner, it's a little out of balance. Salary cap, is it even realistic in baseball?
Well, let me say a couple things. You mentioned Detroit and Cleveland. They did a great job last year. I think that it's important for our smaller markets to do something more than qualify for the playoffs, right? There's a difference between getting into the first round and going deeper in the playoffs. So, the fact that they got there doesn't really resolve the issue in my mind. Look, about salary caps, I'd say this. There are 5 major North American sports, counting soccer. 4 of them have a cap. We don't. We do hear a lot about it from fans, particularly in smaller markets. But the reality is we're, 2 years away from the end of the basic agreement. We're just not in a position where we are talking about or have made decisions about what's ahead in the next round of bargaining. I think that, a lot of water is going to go over the dam before we need to deal with that issue.
So I have been in favor of all the changes, especially the pitch clock and the defensive shift. I wanted more base runners. I wanted more doubles landing. I wanted more stolen bases, and it's all transpired. I will push back. So my theory on all replay is the minute you introduce it into any sport, it grows. And it slows the game down. And I think your game now is faster, more succinct, and I think it's a better sport to watch. So you guys are doing something where you can challenge a couple of times a game. You can challenge strike calls. Here's my pushback, because I'm for changes. The strike zone is a living, breathing thing. The strike zone for Aaron Judge is big. For Ohtani, it's big. For Altuve, it's small. For Mike Trout, it's small. So it's kind of a living, breathing. It's not like the first down marker, right? Like, here's what you got to get. It moves. Is there an argument that you've done so much to speed the game up that if you put it in, it's going to create length and time and restraints? And listen, the human factor's fine. We've made it this far with real umpires.
Look, let's start with your last thought. All the conversation about the automated ball strike system should not obscure the fact that our umpires do a phenomenal job calling balls and strikes. I would say this. The system adjusts to the differences that you're talking about in terms of size. The strike zone that it calls is different for Aaron Judge than it is for Jose Altuve. And in terms of time, during the spring training experiment, and this is one of the reasons we do experiments, challenges add, slightly more than 10 seconds to the game time. So it is a very fast system. The umpire gets the call in his ear almost immediately. So we are cognizant of doing something that would slow the game down after we've worked so hard to speed it up.
Finally, Commissioner, Rob Manfred joining us for our radio audience, is that I always say that I appreciate analytics. Moneyball's my all-time favorite movie. I love Moneyball. Miracle on Ice with Herb Brooks is my second favorite, but Moneyball, I just watched Moneyball a month ago. I love it. And I love analytics, but I prefer Manalytics, where you use analytics, but in the big games, I want Aaron Judge at the plate or Shohei. I just go get a hit, go make a play. math doesn't make great television. How do you weigh that when you think of things, that analytics make us smarter? But I pushed back on Adam Silver. I said, your guys are shooting too many threes. It's really repetitive, sometimes hard to watch. How do you weigh in on analytics and TV and all those components?
Yeah, look, I think that one of the big motivations for the set of rule changes that we did 2 years ago was we felt that analytics had changed the game in a way that was not positive in terms of the entertainment value of the sport. And I think it's incumbent upon the commissioner's office, our commissioner's office, to think about what's happening as a result of the application of analytics to the sport and be smart enough to come up with rule changes that prevent the analytics from robbing fans of the entertainment that's so important in sport.
I got to ask you one more thing. The golden at bat. I love the idea. Again, I know the purists are not going to like it. I like it because to me, it gets a rock star in a big spot to the plate. And by the way, if I know a manager can bring up Bryce Harper again and he's at the bottom of a lineup, I'm going to watch television. I'm not going to go, okay, 7, 8, 9 hitters, it's over. I get Bryce Harper or Ohtani or Aaron Judge. That one's going to be a hard push, Commissioner. That's not going to be easy. Do you believe, how long will that fight be, and will you experiment with it?
Look, I answered a question in an interview about something that, an idea that had been thrown out in an owners meeting that, had not gotten a lot of attention. The answer I gave was about the golden at-bat rule. I think people have jumped to the conclusion that, somehow that rule change is right around the corner. If there's ever going to be serious conversation about the golden at-bat rule, it's going to have to start with experimentation at the minor league level, probably years of experimentation, because it is one of those rules. While it has the positives that you have identified, there are complications that would flow from this rule in terms of the play of the game. Things like, I use the golden at bat to put Rob Manfred up. He makes an out, and then it's his natural place in the lineup that's next. Do we really want that happening?
Right.
The player that you want to put at the plate is on base. How does that substitution take place? You got to think through all those things, and there are a lot of complications with it. I think the best thing to say about the golden at-bat rule is you've got it right. It's a long way away, if ever, from being even considered.
Well, whether it's the games in Tokyo, the Field of Dreams, the Rickwood Field, all this stuff, there are more events ever than baseball. I thought the London games, Phillies-Mets, was great. It got me to a television, and at some point, that's the name of the game. That's driving 30% of revenue is the TV rev. So, Commissioner, I appreciate you stopping by. The sport's in a great place, and congratulations on making moves that needed to be made.
Thank you, Colin. And, stay tuned for Bristol this year. It's going to be great.
All right. Thank you, Rob Manfred.